The Terminator. I'm sure we can all agree this is either number 1 or number 2 in terms of the best weapons in the game. But how did it establish itself at that level given there's so much competition? And for those of you who don't know, the Terminator is the best bow in the game. It shoots 3 arrows at once. Its right click ability basically shoots a laser beam. It gives an insane amount of base damaging stats. And at the same time it also divides your crit chance by 4. But before I go any further, the Terminator wasn't always in the game. On the 31st of May 2021, the Terminator was added. This coincided with the introduction of Void Gloom Slayers, and the addition of other bows such as the Juju Shortbow. But the Terminator and the Juju Shortbow aren't just regular bows, these bows are short bows. And as stated on the Terminator itself, a shortbow is basically just a bow that instantly shoots. In regular Minecraft, you're not able to just click and shoot, that's not how it works. Now, prior to the introduction of the Terminator, the Juju Shortbow, and shortbows in general, bows were, let's say, a little bit unbalanced. In a sense of, for instance, within dungeons, the archer class was basically obsolete because, realistically, there weren't any bows strong enough to basically compete with the other classes. The introduction of the Terminator made an archer not only viable, but basically essential to most dungeon runs. And especially in Master Mode, if you don't have a Terminator, then you're going to struggle. As you can imagine, the days of running around with a Runan's bow trying to do damage were well and truly buried with the introduction of short bows, and especially the Terminator. At the time of the Terminator's introduction, undoubtedly, the Hyperion was by far the best weapon in the game. And we all know, nowadays, the Hyperion comes at a massive price. But that wasn't always the case. When the Terminator was introduced into Hypixel Skyblock, the Hyperion was going for around about 500 million coins. All in. As we can see, because of other factors, not the Terminator, the price has massively increased. When the Terminator was first introduced, this was by far the most expensive weapon in the game, prices well over 1 billion coins. Of course, this weapon was added to the game around about 2 years ago. So, inflation has happened, and now 1 billion coins is nowhere near what 1 billion coins was worth back then. But even so, 1 billion coins right now to drop on a single weapon is quite a lot of coins. But back in the day, it was ridiculous. Majority of players understandably couldn't afford this. Which left most people thinking, well, if this weapon is 1 billion coins, then it's got to be insane. And all they were right. But how do you even obtain the Terminator? Well, the Terminator is craftable basically by using a number of different items. The main item to actually craft the Terminator is the Judgment Core. And of course, the way you obtain the Judgment Core is through Enderman Slayer. So in order to actually drop the Judgment Core from Enderman Slayer, first of all, you must have Enderman Slayer level 7, you must be killing a tier 4 Void Gloom, and if you kill the tier 4 Void Gloom, you have a 0.06% chance to drop it. Alternatively, you can fill the meter, which is 885k Enderman Slayer XP. Or if you're very lucky, you can loot share it from another player, which is even more rare to do. Before we go any further, this is just a reminder to subscribe to the channel, become part of the 24%. Also, you should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of every single video. Anyway, from there, the Judgment Core is then combined with other items such as tessellated ender pearls, tarantula silk, and braided griffin feathers that can be obtained from Diana, into this mighty weapon. Over 2 years, the crafting recipes have been chopped and changed, mostly staying around about the same, balancing corrections such as taking off 25 damage in 2021, and other quality of life changes have really helped the Terminator grow. Nowadays, the requirement to use this weapon is Enderman Slayer 7, which for most players is fairly difficult to achieve. However, when the Terminator was first introduced, this requirement didn't actually carry over into dungeons, and back in the day, most people used the Terminator just purely for dungeons, which meant that the only barrier to entry to use the Terminator was the amount of coins it costed. Of course, this was fairly quickly fixed, but it was a crazy time. Of course, since then, Skyblock has progressed, and dungeons isn't the only use for the Terminator. Having said that, like I mentioned before, it is pretty much essential for Master Mode, also for higher tiers of Kudra, and as I'm sure we know, higher tiers of Kudra is probably one of the best ways to make money at the moment. Like with most things in Skyblock, you have to invest to make coins. As for the current price point of the Terminator, as we can see, a completely clean Terminator as of today is going for around about 618 million coins. Of course, depending on the upgrades of the items, the price can vary quite a lot. But not only that, the price of the Terminator at the moment is fairly stable, but there's a few factors that will contribute towards a change. For instance, its effectiveness within Master Mode and Kudra for the most part. If the mirror is Aatrox, then you'll probably see a slight decrease in price, seeing as more people will be doing Slayers, and in turn more people will be basically dropping Judgment Cores, therefore contributing towards a decrease in the price of the Terminator. But not a massive decrease. With weapons with the status of the Terminator and the Hyperion, it really is just down to how many people actually want the weapon. which in turn is directly impacted by its effectiveness in the things that it's effective in. Well, as of this moment in time, with the imminent introduction of attribute shards into pretty much every item, along with the Crimson Isle items too, the future for the Terminator has never looked brighter. You see, there's this attribute shard called Deadeye, and if we take a look at what this actually does, increases damage from ranged weapons by 25%. Okay, unfortunately, we can apply it, but I haven't done the tier of Kudra required to actually be able to use it, so I wish this would do more damage, but it just doesn't at the moment, which is kind of sad. Of course, Deadeye 10 is going to be very expensive, but I mean, it's basically going to buff the Terminator's damage by 25%. So, oh, well, it potentially could if you get Deadeye 10. That is insane. Now, initially when using the Terminator and looking at the damage stats, they don't seem amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong, 268k for a bow is good, especially with it being a short bow because the DPS is pretty insane. But you then have to consider that the Terminator shoots 3 bows at once that all deal the same damage, so you can potentially deal 3 times the amount of damage at once than you initially think. Providing you've got the right attack speed too, look how you can just fire it so quickly. Just kind of insane. And like I mentioned before, the right click, well, quite literally terminates the mobs, so yeah. Now, I've talked about the history of the Terminator, I've talked about why it's so good, and I've talked about why it's so expensive. But will there ever be something that beats the Terminator that contributes towards the downfall of the Terminator? Well, to be honest, that's a question that I just don't have an answer to. Considering the Terminator was brought to us through Void Gloom Slayer, of course there's still 2 more slots for 2 new Slayers that could potentially bring something that's better than the Terminator in terms of a bow. Of course, in terms of a bow, Blaze Slayer hasn't brought that to us, but like I said, there's still time. And I think there personally definitely will be. I mean, this whole new attribute shard change is probably gearing towards more end gear items coming out. And even looking back to the introduction of item sets like Shadow Assassin, when Shadow Assassin first came out, we thought this is the best new thing, probably not going to be bested for a while. And then a few months later, they brought Necron out, and then everyone was like, oh, okay, so this has happened. The thing is with Skyblock is, updates and new things that are brought to us are usually quite unexpected and random. Things like the foraging update that we've been promised for years upon years haven't been released, and at the same time, we've seen the introduction of many new updates that potentially weren't even needed. And the exact same goes for the Slayers V2 update. Where is that? So I think there will be something better than the Terminator in the future. Something that probably drastically decreases the price of the Terminator. Either that, or that new item may just be drastically more expensive when inflation gets to that point. But that in a nutshell is the history and the rise of the Terminator. Let me know in the comments, for you, Hyperion or Terminator, which one would you take if you had to take just one? Anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.